I've noticed something that you say a lot and I don't notice it.
Right, okay.
You say that I repeat the same things over and over again, like on the videos or on the in therapy and stuff. There's certain things that I can't let go of, or I can't, once I've talked about it a couple of times, I can't move on from it. I sort of, as I would say, I don't forgive and forget, I remember and hold grudges. But I didn't notice what you said, and it's like, well, you've told me this about 45 times, but to me, they're still very there in my mind and that kind of thing. It's just that I've never noticed, but I do get a sense that I find it difficult to let go of things, and I do definitely hold grudges and remember things which other people might think as minor, but to me they become really big things. And then some of my big things are big things, but some of my big things I can merely minimise them and focus on the little things. And one thing I've been thinking about is, like, you hear about it a lot regarding somebody who's experienced sexual abuse. Forgiveness. That's something that I don't understand or get my head round, or I don't know what my interpretation of forgiveness is, like saying, oh, it's okay. And I can't say, oh, it's okay that happened to me. But like, how do I move on if I'm always bothered by my experiences and can't move on from them?
I think it's that in itself, is what you said, if I'm always bothered, and what we just discussed earlier is about you saying, I'm not bothered about that. So you can't get to a place where what you said is, I can't get to a place where I say, I'm not bothered about what happened to me when I was little. But if you look at the connotations of the words, and the sentences are totally different. So as you said that, I must have repeated about 45 times. I don't know how many times you count them, but 45 you said, that I repeat myself and will often say the same thing as you, and each time that you say it, if you think about everything that we do that's negative and positive is a repeat. And so for us to be able to wake up from certain things, it needs to be repeated until eventually it's like, oh, I heard it that time. So it's like, say like you watch a movie and then you watch the movie again, and because it's been repeated, at the point that you might wake up in the movie might be a point where, wow, I didn't realise they said that last time. I didn't see that. Do you see what I mean? So if you can go around the same ground again, there might be something in there that you spot this time that's different, just to wake you up. So when you're, like we spoke on the last video about work, what were you talking about primarily is that work comes before you. And because work came before you, as majority of people put the work before themselves as human beings, because that's what we're taught to do. It's like almost you get a prize, as you'd said, Debbie can do this and things like that. You almost get a prize for working your backside off, and then dying at the end of it. That's that's what your prize is in retirement. So not everybody, but there you go. So what I mean by that is, often we're taught to take our minds off of a problem that we've got, instead of saying, let your mind work through that problem, or keep your mind on it until it's resolved. We're told to do the opposite. Go get busy and go do something else instead. So that's what you did. You did it very well. You said when you were at work, you got very busy to the point where you got praised for being busy. But if there was a time where you, like you said, there was one time where you dared to actually speak up and say, I can't do both of these things and put my all into them, then you got a telling off for it. So if you think about that indoctrinant inside of you that would have, you know, quite often at school when there's a bereavement in the family, just send a child to school, and it's like, why? Why would you do that? You need to discuss that with the child. You need to, you know, so it's the best place for them, keep the mind off it. And it's like, but that's where our teaching is wrong. Do you see what I mean? To take your mind off something. So then what happens is the mind starts leaking it out. It's like a grass is the body. That's why people go red. The mind starts leaking it out as you get older, and it starts to now bother you. And you think, well, it didn't bother me then. It's like, well, now it is, because you've been holding it for that long. So for you, holding the grudge, as you're holding the grudge, or as you said, forgiveness, holding a grudge means that you're drinking the poison, you're expecting the perpetrator to die. So holding the grudge is just holding it within inside of yourself, and who do you think it's going to hurt? Well, it's inside of you. So forgiveness isn't forgiving them in terms of, say the perpetrator went to jail. Yeah. Do you think that if you went to the judge and says, I've forgiven him now, can he come out of jail? Do you think he's going to come out of jail? No. So forgiveness is not letting the person off the hook of the responsibility of what they've done. Forgiveness is letting it come out of you, is releasing yourself from holding the grudge of drinking the poison. And ultimately that's where it is. So the other interpretation that you'd thought this was talking about as well was to say, I'm not bothered. And can people get to a point where they're not bothered about what happened to them when they were little? Well, there'd be no purpose if you couldn't get to that point, really. So the point of isn't that you're not bothered about what happened when you were little, because as I've given the example, that would be like saying somebody comes up and says I was abused, and you say no, I was raped, and you saying I'm not bothered. It's not about that, you know, devaluing yourself in a way like that. It's more saying that doesn't bother me anymore like it used to. It just doesn't bother me in the same way that it used to, because I've let it go. So it's not that I can't remember it. I can remember it. My body just does not react to it. Do you see what I mean? So that's the difference between I'm not bothered by or I'm not bothered.
Yeah.
Can you see the difference?
Yeah.
So ultimately that's where it is. So when the way that you're seeing it is, well, I'd invalidate myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, and somebody had said that, you know, as the body renews itself every 7 years, then your perpetrator has not actually put his hands on this body. He put his hands on or he raped you when you were a child. So you're bothered and by the memories of what happened to you as a child, and your body's bothered by you holding the memories of what's happened to you as a child, just the same as everybody, you know, as the Jesuit said, and then Freud, you know, Jesuit said, show me the boy age 7 and I'll show you the man, and as Freud said, everybody's children running around in adults' bodies. You can see that by some of the behaviours, but ultimately the meaning is, you know, we're programmed at that age, and then we spend the rest of our lives, and that's why, as I say, the school is a prison. You learn must, should, have to, got to, and the biggest one is fear. So then when you're older, I've got to do that, I should do that, and then you live in fear of authorities because you'll get proper done. As I used to say as a child, not done, you're going to get proper done. Do you see what I mean? So it's like that as, you know, so then if you wanted to control people as Hitler did, the young man with the likes of Freud, I don't know if they wanted him to really, but anyway, how can you control human beings is get them at a young age. And if you get them at the young age and program them, they're more likely to comply and just do as they're told. And then they're not going to look outside of a box and ask any questions. Because when children ask why, they grow up, why, but why, but why? you know, quite often you might, because it just is like that, because I said so. And so you rarely look outside of the box to say, you know, why is this world like this? Who made it like this? And, you know, as I say, we're in a cult. And why is it? What's the purpose of it? And it's so we can be controlled and pay everything that we're told to pay and not really question it and be in fear of questioning it.
I know it makes sense what you're saying, but I don't feel it and understand this not holding it anymore, because I don't think I do, but I can't let things drop. It's like thinking about the person who abused me when I was little. I don't think bad things about him. I don't think, oh, I wish you were dead, or I hope you rot in hell, or I don't think you've ruined my life or anything like that. So how do I don't think I feel those things, or I don't have those thoughts or anything like that. So how does forgiveness fit in when I don't know what I'm trying to say. I just don't know how to forgive myself, or because I don't think I've got anything to forgive. It wasn't my fault. And so I'm getting really confused about how to not be as stuck. And how, you know, I hear lots of things and all these positive quotes and stuff like that, which their intention is to help, but I find them quite negative when it's like, it's not the trauma you've been through, it's how you respond. So it's like, well, so it's my fault now, it's down to me, this is how I'm responding, and I don't know how else to be. I don't know how to forgive myself. I don't know what that means. I don't know how to. I understand now about not being bothered. I don't know how to let it not bother me anymore.
Quote, I guess it's you'd have to understand the quote really, which in my opinion it's like a stupid quote. That's all I can say. I'm not calling anybody stupid, but that's what it sounds like to me, that if you say to somebody, because then they might interpret the way you are. It's not about the trauma, it's about the way that you've responded. It's like, well, tell me that who would stand up after being raped at 5 years old and be okay with it?
Yeah.
So that sounds like a stupid quote.
It's just, because obviously when I'm in therapy, I think very different, but the rest of the week, the rest of the time, I'm on my own with my own thoughts, and I do see a lot of these quotes, and it's like, we're all in the same ocean, but it's how we fight the storm, or it's how we do, and it's like, I don't get it. You're saying it's my fault, and I'm trying really hard not to be like that. And
that's exactly why I think the stupid quotes as well. We're not in an ocean fighting a storm. We're fighting ourselves, and it's pointless. And the fight is pointless. It's like, why have we come on this planet to fight? Because everybody's taught us to use that word, to fight. So what we're going to fight then? We're going to fight ourselves. We're going to, you know, we're fighting the battle of COVID. We're fighting this and we're fighting that. It's like, what? That is just ridiculous. It's like, you know, you're fighting COVID. How are you fighting it? It's like, you know, you're getting on the gloves and do you see what I mean? And if we can be distracted, I think, in doing those certain things, because, you know, personally, I didn't believe any of it. I didn't believe, you know, the COVID thing and everything else. I don't believe that. I just think it was a way to inject people and give them things they didn't particularly want and that they weren't fully informed of. So I just think, you know, and as it's turned out now, you know, it's been detrimental to a lot of people. But I think it's that where we're all in the same boat fighting something. We're all in the same boat fighting ourselves. And it's being able to recognise is the fight isn't against the world, the fight is against yourself. It's against the chattering, as I say, that schizophrenic voice in your head that constantly, you know, I interpret it as deliver me from evil, which is talking about the nasty little voice in your head, as you can hear, telling you to starve yourself, to walk, to do all these things, the nasty little program, you know, in your head. And it's, who are you fighting against? Well, the argument's in your head against yourself. So who else are you fighting against? And then your interpretation of that argument going on in your head, you're going to believe it's you and it's the world. So because you believe it's you and it's the world, it's going to be projected onto the world then. You know, so I'm in danger now because this is a dangerous world, because I experienced a dangerous experience. Therefore, I interpret everything as a danger. So then what's going to happen? Well, you're going to start seeing quotes like that of we're fighting. You're going to start, do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So the more that we think it, the more that we see it in our environment, the more we're going to come across it. So, you know, when and that you're interpreting that I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know anybody really that has been here as a human being and come back and wrote an instruction book on how to do it, apart from on the Emerald tablets or the people that, you know, before the Bible was indoctrinated, had written it. I only know one person that wrote the Bible. I don't know if it's true, because some of it that says it looks like the opposite had a hand in it as well. But you know, it's that way you look inside yourself, and the biggest relationship you can have is the one with yourself, and to overcome this voice.
So is that what it's about? It's about forgiving that voice and understanding where it's come from, but letting it go because it's not needed anymore.
It's not forgiving the voice, because the voice is a phenomenon and it doesn't really exist. So the voice just takes your energy. The voice and the internal dialogue in your head, you believe that it's talking to you, is not, as I'd said before, it's a recording. Your brain's a recording machine. You know, as we're told, intelligence is, oh, you know a lot of information, therefore you're intelligent. It's like, no, my brain's a recording machine. And the recording machine, you wouldn't call that intelligence. So it's what I'm born with. If you're saying intelligence, we're all born with the same intelligence. But it's what's recorded onto our head that can interrupt. I can't hold all that information because this happened to me.
Yeah.
Or this happened to me. Do you see what I mean? Like in schools, I can't hold that information, but then you get punished because you can't hold a lot of information because you're there to please everyone else.
Yeah, it's like I can't remember new stuff because it's so packed with everything
all the
else,
old stuff.
all the old
so
stuff.
there isn't enough. There's not enough room for it. So the forgiveness is that if you can understand that everybody in prison has been hurt, because hurt people hurt people. So if you're hurt, you know, and somebody does something barbaric to you when you're a child, then that changes the mapping of your brain. So the mapping of your brain will change, and quite often the pleasure-pain networks knit together. So, and you can, as Matt said before, on a Friday evening, the pleasure-pain network plays out massively in society, because we've had an ad, and we worked hard at work all week. Let's go and have some pleasure. Do you see what I mean? So they've knitted together, is that whatever we do becomes a reward for a punishment. If something bad happens, do something good for yourself. So the pleasure pain, but for people, you know, that have suffered horrific experiences, the pleasure pain can be heightened, and it can be more horrific. For instance, there's a man and he puts a nail through his penis. And he puts a nail through his penis. I think it's like a trick. I'm not sure if he still does it, but it used to be a trick. And when he pulled the nail out, the blood had spurt out. And that were his pleasure. The reason being is because his pleasure pain networks knitted together, because he was abused by his mother as a child, and because he was abused by his mother. So everything in our brain is shaped by our childhood. So like when you listen about Rosemary and Fred's West past, you have a level of I understand why they behave like that, because we kind of get the best of our parents, so we might go one step further. So it's like that. So you can understand, not that we don't know right from wrong, we do, but it's the voice in your head that's chattering away as you're doing. You know that you have an eating disorder. You say, I have an eating disorder. I know it's a disorder. What act do you do to make it a disorder? Well, I do this. I don't want to do it. And the voice drove me till I killed myself. So I don't want to do that. But I listened to it. I felt it. It felt like me. It felt like I should do it. And this voice isn't you, but you've got so attached to it. And so in society, you see yourself as, the label. Everybody wants to address themselves as a label. And the label means you're owned by the labelers. Do you see what I mean? But you're not the label. You're a spirit. And you're a spirit observing the label. So when you come into therapy and I say what happened, you will reflect. You will have a look in your mind at what happened. Because the majority of people, if I said to you now, tell me what your toes feel like, I rarely recognize anyone that will go, okay. Do you see what I mean? Start feeling the toes. Something inside of you goes down to your toes. And so then who is that? There's only one of you in there. It actually goes down inside and checks it out. What does the toes feel like? So it's like, this is your machine, it's your house, like a car. When there's a problem with it, like a car, or there's a problem with a car. But this machine gets treated with less respect and no respect than the majority of the machines out there. I'm not saying that they don't, but this machine particularly it's just disgusting. It's full of chemicals, gets chemicals rubbed all over it, gets treated with chemicals, we eat chemicals, we do all those things to it. So you come last. You come last in the world of work. You come last in the world to you. And you definitely come last to a disorder. So that's what you're going to do in the brain mapping. And then you might give yourself a little treat because you might have had enough punishment, enough to earn one. And so when you're talking about forgiveness, part of it might be forgiving yourself. I forgive that part of me that abuses myself. I forgive that part that continues to abuse myself. And so when you look at the rapist when you were a child, I don't feel angry with him. I don't feel anything with him. It's like, no, you don't, because you feel fear of him. You avoid him. You're still scared of him. So you're too busy feeling those things. And what would it feel like to be angry with it? What would you do then with anger instead of fear?
I don't know.
Because anger is a totally different feeling. If you're thinking you believe that he's more powerful than you, then and that he still wants to harm you, and so you play this avoidance game. So when you say, well, I don't really think about him, it's like, how can I forgive it? You're too scared to forgive him because you've not got to that stage. You're too busy back here in the fear as you were when you were a child, because as you often refer to yourself as going back into your child, and that's what you do when you think of him. And it's that, as you used to say, this is a bit far-fetched, isn't it? He didn't really do that, as if it was something that wasn't very important for you. So it's being able to be able to feel and absorb the truth about it within yourself. And then the forgiveness parts, when you come to that, because anger is like when you're grieving a death, anger is usually quite often at the latter end of the stage. And then
so is
acceptance.
So dealing with something like, I know they overuse the word trauma or whatever, it's everywhere at the minute, but dealing with something like the experience I went through when I was little, so I have to go, I go through stages like you do when you've bereaved, that there's different stages, and I'm still in that very much fear, right, as if I still am 6 or 7, But I've got to go through those other stages to move on to get to where I'm not bothered by it.
Or it's, well, those, it's like so it's naming them as not rather a stage than a process of being able to get to that, to have that conversation with yourself about what he did to you, the fact that you've spent your life based on this, you've spent your life living it, reliving it, avoiding it, behaviours because of it. You know, you've spent your life in that and you've normalized it. And if you think about, you mentioned earlier, you know, you come into therapy and you see me once a week. But then when you go out in the external world, you've got 6 days of negative being programmed with negative. And so when you're talking about trauma and traumas everywhere, it's like we're in a world that incites trauma, but then says, I'm informed about it. And it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Because if everybody's informed and trauma informed and they know about trauma, then how come they're still inciting it? And this is, in my opinion, people are still inciting, yeah, the very thing that you want to get over. These are the very thing that's still being fed because people are still going to work. They're still working very hard. They're still having to put their things to the back burner. Yeah, they're still going to take the mind off something. They're still inciting, you know, a trauma reaction to a child when they send them to school. In fact, it's worse now because children have separation anxiety even earlier, because that's what it was. You know, what did Hitler say? How can you control a human being? You get them early, and now it's even earlier because before it was 5. What do you think they're going to do to them now? It's like they're being separated from the parents even earlier. And they're, I just need a break from these children. I need a break. It's like, so the child's constantly told, you're not wanted here. You're too much for me to deal with. And then it becomes a world where people can't see outside of the box. Well, what else would I do? Well, that's because we were all told to separate from our families. Move away, you can move abroad if you want, you can move there, you can move there. There's very little, you know, neighbourhoods where everybody was in and out of each other's houses and things like that. And I'm not saying it was healthier, but it was healthier. I'm not saying there wasn't abusers around, there were abusers around. But it's that you're sending them to total strangers. And as an adult, you still feel that anxiety when you go somewhere new. When you start, I wonder if they'll like me. They might not like me. And they have to do this, and you're nervous, and you can't sleep the day before you're starting a new job, and you're a little bit nervous. You're not quite sure how to do it, and you're learning. I think you have to learn about your new environment and things like that. You constantly go through that all the time from meeting another human being. But animals don't do that. You don't see animals doing that. They just embrace themselves as if they've known each other for many years. They might meet one dog and say, I hate you, I'm going to bite you. And they might meet another and they just go up and embrace each other. There's no rules about it. They just go up and embrace each other. But for us, it's caution. So it's that way the world has been orchestrated in a certain way for a certain reason. And we go along with it. And we can't see another one outside of that box just because we're in a box. We're in a little prison that we've been put in. Well, how would it be then? How can I go to work if my children don't go to school? And if my children don't go to school, they'll be illiterate. It's like, what? How will your children be? The children learn your language and you don't even have to teach them it. Because when you learn a language as an adult, you go somewhere and say, right, this is what we're going to teach, and it's going to go like this. And okay, are you ready? And then we start, don't we? You don't give that to a child, do you? It's like, this is the language you're going to learn. You don't need to tell a child, oh, now you're learning this language. You just speak to them. You just speak to them, and the brain records it because it already knows how to do it. And the child knows everything you do. I don't know where they get that from. I didn't bring them up to be like that. like they're copying you.
Mm.
So you might not know where they got it from, but they know where they got it from, because that's exactly what you do, or it's exactly what somebody in your family does, or somebody else in their environment. So it's, looking at the world that you're in and what it's, telling you to do, opposed to when you come into therapy, and the point of letting go in therapy is not letting go of the person. You're not dropping them off the planet. It's about letting go of what's going on in your head that's disturbing you. So ultimately, we don't bring everybody else in the room. We bring the people that you bring that's in your mind. So therefore, it's your world is based on your mind.
So it's not about them anymore.
It's not about them, it's about you, because you, as you said, this is about you and your grudge.
Yeah.
It's not about him. It's about you and your grudge, because he doesn't know how you feel right now. Doesn't know. Far too busy focusing on himself. And when you think about somebody that raped you, learnt rape, because that's what children do, don't they? When you learn something, you go and show your friends it. So quite often, somebody might come and they're being raped by another child, and they have the same reaction as it's still as disturbing. And so it's that way that child must have learnt that from somewhere, because they did an experiment with a Bobo doll, and children did the same as they saw the adults do. And so quite often they'll come in and they'll show you, this is what's going on right now in my world. And it's like that. And so then the brain's being mapped, and it gets acted out when they're adults. They either do it or they're very much against it, but it might impact them enough not to have children, or have a life based on maladaptions as you've got.
Yeah.
So the sickness just isn't there. We've normalised sickness in society. The chattering voice in our heads.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah, there are two gifts that we were given. The gift of vibration of our voice, and that's where people believe manifestations come from. And the gift of daydreaming, which we're told not to do, or she's a daydreamer. But they're the very gifts that the one that made us gave us for a reason. And so the gift of daydreaming is that we're constantly daydreaming. The chattering voice daydreams for you, but it's like you can, when you're awake, you daydream good stuff because you're electing to think it. And when you're asleep, you're allowing the egoic past to daydream the bad stuff. But everything on this planet created by a daydream. So it's just that you need to be awake, because you might get a little bit of good, and then people just say, oh, well, it'll come good in the end, and then it goes like that. And it's like the good ship, the bad ship, the good ship, the bad ship. Instead of just recognising, no, you're asleep, you're awake, you're asleep, you're awake.
Yeah.
So, does that answer your question?
Sort of, yeah. I understand it a bit more.
Right.
And I think it's just, yeah.
Can you forgive you for punishing your body?
I don't know.
And what do you think to you still carrying on punishing your body because of a memory?
When you say it like that, it sounds stupid and pointless, and
isn't that the way
that keeping me stuck?
But so if you see the world and some of the things that you hear in it, you can hear how the ego sounds then. Sounds stupid and pointless. It just goes around and everything's a repeat. You see, I repeated for 45 times, And because you repeat things, don't you see the repeats in the world? That's stupid and pointless. Just goes round and round and round like a merry-go-round. Everything you see, like you see soaps, out the repeats. Every year there might be the same. There's going to be the same drama, the same trouble. It's never the same excitement. It's always the same nastiness. On the news, same nastiness, orchestrated to be nasty. You might get a tiny little bit of good. Films, nastiness. So when you think in this world anyway, where we are, and this is not the same for everybody in every world, but if you think about where we are with all this nastiness, this poisoning of this nastiness that we're constantly brainwashed with, how would you expect to turn out? Wouldn't you say, if the word "deliver me from evil" is, and it's the voice, and we're constantly being programmed with it, and you've got to question who put the hand on the Bible then and started to write in it and invited slavery and the raping of children? That if a man takes a child and rapes her, then he should marry her for 40 years. Imagine staying with your rapist for 40 years and he can only divorce her if he then goes off with someone else.
Is that what it says in the Bible?
Mm-hmm. Not exactly in those words, but ultimately that's what it says. But I'd be thinking, I don't believe our Creator wrote that. So I think it was why the words "deliver me from evil" was written as well. How do you feel after that?
A bit confused.
Okay.
Things to think about. New things to think about.
Yes.
Rather than just repeating the same things.
Okay. Shall we end there?